You've already used the next tool, which is the Solid by Thicken Surface tool, in previous videos when you added the base thickness to the container created by Revolution. As you saw then, the thickness is evenly applied to the selected surface. You should also note that the thickness can be applied to both sides of the surface by selecting this option in the Tool Settings window. I have my tool running, which is this one, and we can look at the Tool Settings window, and we can see that we can add a thickness to both sides at the same time. We can specify a specific thickness. We can select face only, which will actually modify an existing solid object. And we can turn on full dynamics, which allows us to see the process in action. But let's just go through the full range here and look at the various options in operation. I'm going to just dynamically drag thicknesses here rather than set a specific thickness at this point. So the tool's running, and I have two objects on screen. One is simply a shape, and one is a 3D solid. Let's start with the shape. And without any settings at all, I simply data point on it and drag, and we see the arrow, which is the direction of the thickening of the surface. And I can enter a value here in AccuDraw if I want. I'm just going to data point. And there's my thickness added. Let's undo that. I'm going to turn on full dynamics and drag this again. And now we see the thickening while we're dragging the thickness. Data point. And undo again. Let's turn on add to both sides. Data point again, drag. Now we see two arrows, and we're seeing a double thickness on either side of our face. Next is to turn on face only, because I want to affect the faces of my cube. And I simply data point on the face. The first prompt is actually to select the solid. The second one is to identify the face itself. So data point again to accept that face. The compass automatically pops into place, correctly aligned, and I drag in this direction, and I've thickened the solid. Now you could think of this more of an editing tool actually than an actual drawing tool as such. Now the curious thing is, if I try the same thing on this side, select a surface or a face, notice that it doesn't select the previous thickening. It would only select the original element. So we'll drag this way, and we get that. So it does have a slight limitation in that regard. However, it's still a very powerful tool. Now let's try a small exercise. And it's always interesting to compare different methods of developing the same drawings. Good case in point is the L-shaped bracket object that we looked at in two previous videos, where you first created this shape with simple surfaces, and then created it again using the Solid by Extrusion tool. This time let's apply the Thicken Surface tool and see what the difference is. So I'm going to move this slightly off to the side here, and I'm not going to use dimensions, and you don't need to either. What we need to do is create faces first to thicken, so let's do that right now. I'm going to use Smart Line, and I'm going to start here at this point and draw the back face. So I'm going to drag downwards. Let's set the right compass alignment, make that one fairly long. Come across for the base, come up, come across, somewhere about there, connect the dots. There. Let me turn off shading. Now I need a copy of this in this direction because both legs are the same. So let's select it and rotate it with a copy. Now let's see what active angle we need. So I'm copying from that point there. Well, that won't do. Let's change the compass. That is the right compass, but it's on the wrong side. So let's change that to that. There. So now I have my exact copy. Now sometimes, depending which way you approach this, you may need to use 270 or 90. And again, it's which way round the compass is, but it's easier just to switch alignments to see. So we'll data point there, and there's my second face. Now we can thicken. I don't want to use face, but that's really for 3D. I'll leave full dynamics on, and I don't particularly want the originals. So let's start with the bottom. And I'm going to data point there and drag upwards, and approximately there, I think. Going to drag on this face, come across, again approximately the same, but you would normally enter dimensions. Now I need the triangular web. So let's draw that one first. Back to Smart Line. We'll start there. Compass is correctly aligned, making a guess about there. Same length on the axis and back to there. Now we need to thicken this, so back to our tool. This time I want to add to both sides, although I could do it as a single side if necessary, but let's use that option. Click on that, drag, and it's dragging two thicknesses, so you need to be a little careful. There will do. And now I need to simply move this into the corner here. But if you think about it, I don't actually have an edge to attach the web to. Let's color it. This apparent edge here is not a real edge. It's merely the junction of the two solids. I can show that by clicking on that. There's a solid that extends to the back. And here's the back one which extends to the bottom. This is not an edge. So I need to create one. Back to that. And I'm going to change the color so you can see what I'm doing here. Zoom in, and I want the junction between this line and this line. So now I need a line tool, and I have my snap mode set as multi-snap, which includes intersection. So I'm going to find the junction of this line and this line, which is right there. So there's my construction line to be used for attaching my web. Back to element selection. We want to move this from midpoint there to somewhere on that red line. That will do just fine. Here we go. Let's color. There. It's a little bit bright on my screen. Let's change the brightness. That looks better. So there we go. All done by hand, but it would help if you did yours by dimensions, just for the practice. So having drawn the same object 3 different ways, which method do you think is the best? Certainly the quickest way is by the Solid by Thicken Surface tool that we've just used. So far as which is the correct method to use, this is entirely a matter of choice on your part. The last 2 methods using the Extrude and Solid by Thicken Surface tools produce essentially the same looking object, although the 2 methods produce an object with different sets of parts, and that can be significant under certain circumstances. For example, having an object with many assembled but separate parts can be a problem when editing the object, since each part must usually be edited separately. This problem is addressed in the next set of videos, where you learn to use Boolean tools to convert the parts into a single whole, and where you will draw the web-shaped angled object again using another tool. So please practice that. It's a neat little exercise to develop skills with the Solid by Thicken Surface tool.